Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue. You guys remember when Deus Ex Human Revolution came out? It had that cool intro and it had those animated triangles and that sweet music, and you were like, man, this is so cool. And then Deus Ex Mankind Divided came out, and you're like, what the fuck? And then, anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna show some new mesh operations in MODO 12.2 V1. Man, these things are hard to keep track of. 12.2 V1 just came out, and some of the new interface stuff, and we'll make some of those triangles. Cool. Okay, let's get started. All right, we have a blank scene, and we're going to keep this as procedural as possible. I deleted the area light, or the distant light. We just don't need it. And it was bothering me. I'm going to call this mesh triangular plane. And I'm going to start adding some mesh operations. So pop open my mesh op stack. And I'm going to pop open a schematic as well. I love this new interface in 12.2. And yeah, so we don't have a plane primitive, but we do have a cube mesh operation. And we just can make that a plane very easily. Boom, we have a plane. And I'm going to actually make this a little bigger. Maybe let's call it 10 by 10 and 20 by 20 segments. And there we go, a segmented plane just like that. Going to add a triangulate mesh operation, and now it's triangulated. I'm going to add a edges to curves mesh operation. And now I've got, well, actually, let me change single curve to curves per edge, and polyline is good. We'll just keep it at polyline. Now, it's kind of hard to tell that it's doing anything. If I hit delete geometry, you can see there's the polylines. They're just laying on top of these. And we're going to break this out later. So this is looking pretty good. I'm actually going to jump ahead a bit. I'm going to add a new mesh item. So you can do it like this, or you can just press in. So I've got two new mesh items here. One I'm going to call polylines, like that. And the other one I'm going to call triangles. See where this is going. Okay, so triangles, let's add a mesh operator. Merge meshes. And what's cool, and I think this is a 12.2 feature where I can add source, make sure you go to existing, and clear out my search field there. I want my triangular plane to be merged in, right? So if I hide my original triangular plane, I will see my triangles with the mesh merge option. Mesh op is there now, but I have some options in mesh merge now. Basically, I just want the faces, so I could delete or uncheck everything but faces. I just have the faces here, not the polylines. Polylines, I'm going to do the exact sort of opposite or similar thing, but I'm going to do a mesh merge, mesh meshes. And again, I'm going to add my triangular plane as the source. And I just want the curves in this guy. So if I take a look at just the triangles, I just have triangles. And we'll take a look at polylines, I just have polylines. And that has allowed me to separate these two out for fun. Because later on, you're going to want to maybe animate them differently, or have the polylines crawl across the top of the triangles, or just something like that, which, doing a delete with a fall off or something. It's just nice to be able to separate them out, and using the new feature of merge meshes to do that. So those are both merged in. What I can do in my triangular plane, even though it's hidden, I'm going to see whatever changes I make to it, to these other two guys here. I'm going to add a jitter operator. Jitter is really cool. It's a new 12.2 one. And I'm just going to enable Y and press C for my channel hall and pop that up a little bit. And you see it's sort of breaking a little bit. And that's because it's, if you remember, the order of operations here is from bottom up. So I made a plane, I triangulated it, I created edges, I added polyline edges or polyline curves where the edges are. And then I jittered everything, and it didn't jitter everything together, right? The polyline curves are jittered separately from the triangles. So what I want to do is drag that underneath there. And now they're all jittered together. So that's the nice thing about order of operations over here. And if I look at this, I'm just going to bring this down to the schematic, because some people still have a hard time with this. Schematic is great for seeing connections. but it's not great for seeing order of operations. I don't care what program you use. Order of operations is a different thing than connections, and some programs have different ways of organizing order of operations. In MODO you do it in a stack over here, which I think is super easy. Now it's sometimes easier to visualize that order of operations if you sort of arrange it in such a way, and I kind of wish it did this automatically, where in fact I think it did it backwards here. If you have it arranged sort of a bottom up where it's cube and then triangulate and then jitter and then edges to curves like that, then it sort of makes sense to you. These are the two merge meshes that it's flowing into, and you can see these over here. There's my polylines and there's my triangles. But that's how this kind of works, and so that's looking pretty good. We have our jitter in there, and keep in mind, like, this jitter can be animated. So if I look at my jitter node here, let me just sort of scooch these down and zoom in a little bit so you can see it. I've got my range Y here. I can just drag this into the schematic, and I can do things like add an oscillate channel modifier and plug that into range Y. And oscillate, of course, has sort of standard. Actually, instead of oscillate, let's do. I think there's a sine wave, channel waveform. I believe that's what I want. Yeah, so there's different types of waveforms here you can use, and I could plug that in there, and we'll see. Now, again, I could just pop my time up if I want it right there in 12.2, and you can see it, jittering. You could see the sine wave pattern there, the repeating up and down of the sine wave, and of course you can change the amplitude and frequency and whatever, and offset, so you can get some animation there. That's just one way to do it. There's all kinds of ways to do it. So I'm going to keep, I'm not going to have jitter be animated, but I am going to keep it on here, and I'm going to probably just dial it down a little bit. Maybe that's not bad. Get some nice triangle-y stuff there. I'm actually going to add one more. I'll add one more thing for animation if I want to animate it later. So on my triangular plane here, I'm going to add a push modifier. So there's push, and again, drag it underneath edges to curves, and you can see pushes. It's just pushing along the normal. But what's cool is I can, of course, dial in a fall off. So in a simple way, I could just do like a radial fall off. So there's my radial fall off. Let's channel hall push up a little bit. Here's my radial fall off. And you see that again is something we can animate. A better way to do this might be to use a texture fall off and use a ripple texture, which I will do. Why not? So if you haven't used texture fall offs, they're super powerful fall offs. Oh, that was kind of weird. What just happened? I think I deleted one too many things. I just want to delete the radial fall off, dude. Boom. Yes, I want to delete it. So, the push. That's why the push is making it look weird. Okay. So, excuse me. I actually want push below jitter, because push is pushing along the normals, and it's getting it's sort of a weird look here, right? Things are going off to the side and all askance. Askance, that's a good word. Anyway, looks bad. As opposed to putting it under jitter, where we can just push up, but once we have a ripple fall off in there, you'll see the ripple effect, and we keep our nice jitters there. So again, order of operations. Okay, so also, if you're in item mode, you'll see there are handles for most of these items here as well. Okay, so push, let's add a tool pipe, add a fall off, texture fall off, and within the texture fall off, let's add all kinds of textures available to us, of course, because there's a million great procedurals in MODO. I'm going to go with ripples. Ripples, and one of the easy ways to kind of figure out what's going on with procedural texture here, since they don't show up in the viewport, is to pipe it into the material here. So again, if I'm looking at it's just my push in here, which is happening before jitter. So look at these, not using that anymore. Bear with me. Boom, boom, push. And tool pipe has my fall off. There's my texture fall off. And here is my ripples. And this will be my ripple texture locator right here. Okay, so I know like my plane was what, 10 by 10. So I'm just going to do a simple planar projection on Y at about 10 by 10 just to start off, and maybe do that half that, or maybe a little bit less actually, maybe 3. But what I want to show here is I can just take my base material and add it to the scene, and then have my texture color go to diffuse color, and let me pop over a render viewport like so, and kind of pull back a little bit. You can see the ripples on there. So it's just a way of visualizing my ripples, right? Right now I just have way too many ripples. I just want some real simple ones here because I want them flowing through the push modifier. So maybe turn sources to 2 and wavelength up a bit, and maybe the texture locator a little bit smaller like that, or smaller or bigger. Maybe I was wrong. Something like that, yeah. Something like that's looking pretty good. And so you can see if I adjust the phase channel of the ripples here, you'll see them moving here. And if I move my push modifier up to like 0.25 or something, and you'll see them pushing through here. Let me just scooch this over. Pause the rendering. And if I go back to phase and just drag through, you can see it pushing through there now, kind of like a ripple, right? So that's just the push modifier. Without the ripple, it just pushes everything up, and even 0.2 meters, whatever. But with the ripple and with phase active, it's there. So I could keyframe phase, right? Or I can do something procedural, like again, I'm getting into the weeds here a little bit because you can do all kinds of cool stuff to animate this. But just so you know, I could add phase to my channels here, and I can add like a time node. Time, if I could spell time, that'd be nice. So time is just the time, but what it does is it gives me a different number every frame, right? So phase is just a percent, so frame 1, 1%, frame 2, 2%, things like that. So I drag frame into phase. Now the problem is you'll notice that my phase here is at 1800% on frame 18, so it's giving me an integer 18, which would be, and really I want 18 normalized between 18 and 1, or some other way to bring that back down. So I'm actually going to add a math multiply node just to fudge this back down. So I just need to multiply it by 0.01. So it's 18% on frame 18, like so. And now here my phase is 18% on frame 18. So there we go. So time is now animating the ripple effect of our push modifier, which is pretty cool. So let's get back down here and make it look a little bit cooler, like we did in the demo or the first scene, and add some materials to this. So one of the things I need to do is, let me just go ahead and unhook that and right click and remove this node from the space. So when I have a procedural item like the triangles or the polylines, I can't do my typical press M, assign a material. I need to do it as an operator. So I'm going to add an operator, and I'm going to type material. Whoops. I'm going to type material, and there's material tag. So material tag operator is going to, let me give it a name, and I'll call this is just polylines, so I'll call it polylines. Really unique name and creative there, Greg. Same thing with triangles. Add another operator, just the same one, material tag right there, and we'll call this one triangles, of course, because I'm so creative. And then you actually have to go in. Now, if I had selected polygons and pressed M and given it a name, and typically in MODO, it would also create a group in the shader tree for me. But it's not going to do that when you do it via a mesh operation. So I need to do this manually. I add a group, and I just, pick it from the available polygon tags. I have one for polylines, and then, I'm going to add another group, and I'm going to pick the triangles one, and then of course, also when you do it by pressing M, it not only does it make a nice group with the right name on there and have a material in it, it also, also puts a material in it. Here I've got to manually put a material in it. So when you're using mesh operations, it doesn't do any of this stuff for you like it does when you press M. You have to go in and add a group and select the P tag that you named it, and then also add a material to that group. Kind of a pain, but I don't think you want this operation necessarily adding stuff automatically to the tree, because mesh operations are a little more technical, and that may not be what you're always trying to do. All right, so polylines. I'm just going to make this dark here. And you'll notice that nothing's rendering with my polylines because I need to make sure that these curves are rendering. So under the curve tab here, render curves, and maybe like 5 millimeters, or I don't know, maybe thicker than that, 0.02. That's maybe a little too thick, 0.01, we'll call it 0.1. Looking kind of cool there. Maybe I can lose my schematic now and push this over a bit as we're working on the look here. So that's the sort of cool basic look, right? It's also animated, so I could scrub through here and it's going to be changing. And then on our, on our triangles, again, this is the type of thing where you may want to go in and mess around with it. I think I added a gradient to it set to specular color. I treated this like a metal. And if you treat it like a metal, that means you're going to turn diffuse down to 0, and it's going to get its shading from the specular color and the reflectivity amount, right? So it may bump up reflectivity quite a bit, like 80, and then the specular color is going to be based on incidence, and maybe at the, let's see here, middle click and do a gold at that angle, and then the facing angle will do more of a complementary sort of a dark bluish, maybe something like this, rich Deus Ex-y kind of gold. I don't know if I'm getting there, something like that, I think. And yeah, probably not quite that much roughness, maybe 20 or something like that. And then we probably want a decent environment map to give us some nice reflections. So again, I could pop up my asset browser right from the bottom here, and this one right here, actually, Black Studio actually works fairly well for some of these. It's super hot, so if you're going to drag it into your environment, you're going to want to knock down the intensity. Whoops, just drop that into where I didn't want it. I want it here. And you'll see it's, again, like it's a super hot environment. Like the HDR values are really high, so maybe knock it down a little bit. You can also up the roughness to sort of spread those highlights out a little bit. But, we're getting there. Again, something you may want to play with. The polyline materials, I think maybe in the game. I should have looked at the intro again before I started doing this. I think there's kind of a gold, maybe there's sort of a hot gold color as well, maybe something like that. I can't remember exactly. A little more orangey maybe. They were pretty cool though, I remember that. And the music, oh yeah, that was a cool game. Okay, so something along these lines. You will definitely want some depth of field in this, so let's just kind of go to a different view mode here and make sure my camera is visible, and select my camera, press Y. This little dude right here will give you your focal length or focal area, sort of auto-focusing like that, boom. And over in camera effects, let's enable depth of field. That's our focal distance. Did I say focal length? Focal distance is what I meant. And f-stop, we're probably going to have to knock that down quite a bit to get a decent blurry effect there. This is the type of thing Octane is super good at that I'd love to see. But yeah, it's looking pretty cool. I don't know, maybe a little more of a oblique angle here. Get some more of that reflectivity on it. And thank you for the autosave warning, MODO, but no. Yeah, something like that. It's looking a little Deus Ex-y, don't you think? Deus Ex-y? Think I'm gonna go play some Deus Ex now. That's it.
Yum, yum.